Alright, let's get you set up and running your first task. And a quick note before we start. Cowork is only available on paid plans, and it requires the Claude desktop app. If you don't already have it, head to claude.com/download and make sure it's fully up to date. Cowork is moving fast, and updates bring new features, performance wins, and safety improvements. Open the desktop app, and you'll see a mode selector at the top left. Chat, Cowork, and Code. Click on Cowork. Straight away, you'll notice Cowork doesn't say new chat. It actually says new task. And this is a good way to think about it. Every session is designed to tackle a full piece of work end to end. At the bottom, you'll see the Work in a Project dropdown. This is where you give Claude access to a folder on your computer. Click into it and you'll see your recent folders and an option to choose a different folder and a projects section underneath it. When you select a folder, Cowork can read everything inside it, create new files, and save work right back to the same place. That's the only folder it can see. If a task ever needs access to somewhere else, Cowork will explicitly ask, and you can decide whether to grant it permission. One more thing while we're here. Cowork is designed to be as hands-off as possible. So for straightforward tasks, it'll go ahead and create, edit, and move files without stopping to ask. For anything more complex or irreversible, like deleting files or making significant changes, it will check in with you first. You'll also notice projects in here. You'll already know these from the chat course, a persistent workspace with its own instructions and memory. It's the same idea in Cowork, and we'll cover what's different in a later chapter. The main thing worth knowing for now is that selecting a folder will give Cowork access to it for one session, while a project is a permanent workspace that carries context across every task you run in it. Now, if you head over to Settings under the Cowork tab, you'll find Cowork-specific instructions. These are separate from your chat preferences. Anything you write here applies every Cowork session. Personally, I leave these blank. Cowork is moving fast, and most of the safety considerations are already built in and constantly evolving based on user needs. But if you have specific requirements that you want every session to follow, something like always explain your plan before taking action, you can add them here. Just keep them light and keep anything project specific in the project itself. You might also see a dispatch option, which we'll come back to later in the course. Alright, let's run your first task. I'd recommend picking a real folder with real files for this. A great starting point might be your downloads folder. It's probably not well organized, and there are likely files in there that could be renamed, sorted, or deleted. Just keep in mind that when Cowork moves, renames, or deletes files, those changes can be hard to undo, especially when it's working for long stretches across hundreds of files. So pick a folder you're comfortable experimenting with and review the plan before approving anything. So I'll click on the Work in a Project dropdown and select my Downloads folder. And I'll say, go through every file in this folder and organize them into subfolders by type and flag anything that looks like it could be deleted. Straight away, Coworks scan the folder and come back with some context. 2,460 files, 15 gigabytes. Everything from photos to PDFs to 3D printer files. Before it starts moving anything, it asks a few clarifying questions as multiple choice options. How should it group things? What should it do with the files it flags for deletion? And what actually counts as deletable? Instead of assuming, it will clarify upfront so it gets things done right the first time. Once I answer, it builds a plan and gets to work. You can see the steps right here. Creating the folder structure, flagging old files and installers for review, sorting everything into categories, and verifying the results at the end. And it will work through that process step by step. Now it's actually running, and this is where it feels different from chat. I'm not prompting step by step. Claude's just working through the plan on its own. So I could sit here and watch, or I could do something else and come back. But I'm not locked out. If I see something heading in the wrong direction, I can type in the chat at any time to redirect, adjust the approach, or ask it to change course with no need to start over. So I'm hands off, but I'm never fully out of the loop. And it's done. What was 2,460 loose files is now 14 clean top-level folders. Images, documents, archives, videos, and spreadsheets, all sorted. And everything it flagged for deletion, about 2 gigabytes worth of old installers and screenshots, has been moved into a review folder rather than being deleted straight away. It even wrote a summary report so I can see exactly what went where. And so that is your first Cowork task. Real files, real result. Hopefully you can already see how this feels different from chat. And what you just saw is the same loop we'll use for every Cowork task. It always follows the same pattern. First, you can describe your outcome. Then Cowork might ask clarifying questions. Then Cowork will build a plan, work through it, and you can always steer it along the way. And finally, you can review the finished result. Whether you're organizing files, building a report, or processing hundreds of documents, this loop will always be the same. Now it's your turn to go and do a task on your own. Pick a folder, whatever's got some clutter, and ask Cowork to organize it. If you don't have a folder that needs reorganizing, try something simpler. Ask Cowork to generate a summary of what's in a folder as a spreadsheet, or to rename files with confusing names. Cowork can also read the contents of each file and come back with descriptive names based on what's inside.